Thank you, everyone, for watching my afternoon interview here on my show, William Wallace for America. With me today is a longtime acquaintance and friend, Cliff Maloney. Cliff, how are you doing today, my friend? Thanks for coming on today.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, William.
Well, you know, I met you at some event a long time ago. Then you're with, and then what was the organization you were with? We just talked about it.
Yeah, Young Americans for Liberty was with them through 2020.
And so I know how much of a freedom, liberty-minded guy you are, and how much you love America. So I know your path where you are now is going to be a great story to tell everybody, but also how much I always talk about freedom and liberty. You know, that's one thing I always think is under attack in America. So I know that that's still in your heart and mind and conscious. So let's talk about your organization now, Mobilize the Message, and what you all do. First off, how'd you get there to Mobilize the Message?
Yeah, so Mobilize the Message, it's a company we run where pretty much our effort is to go out and find state candidates, right? And look, we've been at this battle, William. I feel like it's finally going more mainstream, this idea that you have to focus at the state level, right? And so what we do is we try to find patriots, liberty-loving, freedom-loving Americans that want to run, and we try to focus at the state level to try to give them the resources and the tactics and kind of the package, if you will, to actually be successful. Because what I found so many times is when you're in these battles, if you step up and you say, listen, I don't like the way our country's being run. I don't like what I'm seeing from the Republican establishment. I don't like what I'm seeing from the corrupt Democrats. If you jump in, you want to run for Congress, or you want to run for U.S. Senate, I mean, you need $3 to $5 million.
Right.
And so I'm always trying to teach our activists or folks that want to run that you have to focus where you can win. And a lot of times that means running for state house or potentially state senate. And so the best way to sum up what we do at Mobilize the Message is we provide a team of professionals, a team of people. We get behind candidates and we work with them to help elevate them, to create credibility, and to really do all the functions so they can do what they want to do, which is get their message out and talk to voters. And so that's kind of our focus is state level campaigns. And then once folks are in, empowering them. Our big battle right now is in Georgia. We've got this corrupt district attorney, Fani Willis, who's targeting Trump. Look, you don't even have to like Trump, but if you like the rule of law, if you think that our judicial system should not be run by corrupt DAs who are drunk on power, this is a battle for you. So I'll share that.
Let's look at the J6ers right now for just a second. I get why people are so mad. I get why there's so many people mad and upset about the J6ers. I get that. But if you look at look at the Proud Boys, I mean, look, you don't even have to like the Proud Boys, but to see that somebody got 22 years in jail for something they said, and they weren't even in DC on January 6th, and they got 22 years for something they said, then you got to kind of look at the rule of law and look at, hey, is there overreach? Is it justifiable? Or are the narratives making it seem palatable for more people to agree with what's, with people losing their constitutional rights? It sounds like what you're talking about there, where the narratives kind of make it, how shall we say, almost justifiable for somebody to lose their constitutional rights, and never should it be justifiable. And it sounds where you guys really kick in. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, you look to Georgia in this case with this DA, right? You've got Senator Colton Moore, who we work with. And, he's looking around and saying, hey, listen, in the state of Georgia, we're the ones that impeach. We're the ones that fund or decide not to fund these district attorneys. It's our constitutional power. It's not that way in every state. Okay, that is the way it's written in the Georgia Constitution. And so you've got a 29-year-old kid in Colton who's looking to the leadership and saying, hey, what are we going to do? When are we going to start this process? And you know what they're telling them? They're telling them to sit down, shut up, and this isn't the time to fight. It's like, this is the battle.
This is the
right?
battle.
This is the battle. We're at war, and you're telling us to sit down. I mean, it kills me how much Republicans fail to lead or even just to do what they say they would do in the election. And you just have all of these party officials where, I mean, let me give you three concrete examples of things happening right now. One, you've got the Georgia situation.
Right.
where the process to defund this corrupt district attorney is not only is it not moving forward for impeachment, Republicans are the reason that she's not being defunded. Okay, that's Georgia. Now let's look to DC. Congress is about to fund the DOJ and FBI. Mark my words. And William, I'll say it right here on your show for everybody. Put me on the record. I hope I'm wrong, but they will fund the DOJ and FBI at record levels in the next appropriations process. I hope that I'm completely wrong, but I guarantee you, Republicans, let me keep saying that, Republicans who control the House will fund at that type of level instead of leading and stripping. And the third thing is Texas. You have a duly elected attorney general in Ken Paxton, a Republican, who is being railroaded and being, they're running this corrupt impeachment sham against him, this whole trial. And Republicans are the ones that supposedly run the state. I mean, this is why the war right now, I feel it. And I know your listeners out there are part of this.
Absolutely.
The war is between the grassroots and the Republican establishment, and they are not representing the interests or the wants of Republican voters.
Look, right here in Louisiana, we've got lots of situations where the establishment Republican Party has really irritated a lot of the like you said, the grassroots, worker bees of the Republican Party, the people that are the heart and soul of Republican values. But the establishment keeps stabbing them in the back. That's how we feel sometimes. And look, the Democrats, for all of their faults, you got to say they get united. Even though there's so many Democrats that are more conservative, they're one issue Democrat voters, and 99% of everything else is conservative. They stick with the Democrat Party simply because they're cohesive. Their establishment doesn't stab them in the back. On some things. Look, I'm on the election integrity side. And I'm the guy that says, look, I think there's problems with our elections. We all know what the problems are. And we don't even have to say machines. Just our registrations are bad. But it amazes me how many establishment-minded or even just average Republican people that are in our party that say, oh, there's nothing wrong with our elections. Our elections are fine. Joe Biden won with fair and square. Get over it. And I'm like, wait a minute. Are we not realizing? Are we not in the same party? Are we not all awake or not? I don't know. So it amazes me sometimes. So you're finding that, and that's why your organization gets involved. It sounds like to right some wrongs, but also in some campaigns for some patriots. So is it two different things your organization does?
Yeah. So once they're in, we're kind of their backbone. I mean, we work to help them. We help to elevate their voice, elevate their message, and so that's what we're doing right now in Georgia. But I'll share with you, William, I think if you were to ask me in 2018, how much do the activists and the grassroots really understand the power of state office? Most people would tell you, it was a tough sell, right? Because we started doing this. I mean, pretty much the 2018 and 2020 and 2022 cycles. I mean, I've only really been at this for 3 cycles, and we've won over 300 state races across the country, just focusing in on that state level. But for a while, there was a lot of, or I should say there was a lack of interest, right? But something happened. And what happened was 2020. Because after 2020, 2 major developments occurred that made people realize, what, maybe the states should have more of our attention. The first was COVID, okay? COVID created this power battle, we'll call it that, between the states and the federal government. And as we all know, there were a couple courageous governors that said, hell no. Right. I'm not going to let you run roughshod over our entire state. And I'm not going to let you, tell us we can't go to work. And I'm not going to let you tell me that we can't go outside without a mask.
Right.
There was an actual battle that impacted folks' everyday life. And so all of a sudden people said, man, I'm really glad, certain states fought back. The second development, which happened, before, is the certification of the election.
Right.
So many people, when it was time to fight and when it was time to ask legitimate questions and take real action, so many people realized, wait a second, who certifies the election? The states.
Right.
The states certify. So I don't care where you are on the spectrum of election integrity. Like you said, if we're just talking about voter rolls,
exactly.
Or if we're, it doesn't matter. What matters is you have to know the process. And the process is the states control it. If there's any type of objection if there's any type of challenge, the states are the ones that get to decide which electors they send into the electoral college.
Right.
So I'll share with you, William, that it has become uh, uh, less of a lonesome journey because federal politics. I mean, we're in the political world. People care and they follow it because it's what people. It's easy to understand, right?
Right.
There's the House, there's the Senate, there's the Supreme Court, and you've got the president, and that's where all the eyeballs are. But what I'm here to tell your listeners and your viewers is that the battle at the state is not only the most important, but it is where you can have the most impact. You try to get involved in a federal race where they're spending 3, 10, maybe 30, heck, maybe $200 million.
Oh, yeah.
It's tough to have an impact. You get involved in a state house race in Louisiana, I mean, you're talking about them spending, $30,000 to $50,000, one person.
If you will, like you're saying, like you just now showed us that the states are the ones who certify the elections, and we all know that Biden won by the 6 states that Bernie Sanders named on the late night show, where he said there's 6 states that were going to swing the election. Did you watch that video?
I did. I've seen that clip.
Yeah, exactly. So when and those are the states where the legislators let the powers that be, we'll just leave it simple for simplicity purposes, run roughshod over them, change their state laws last minute, and that's what turned that election in favor of Joe Biden, because they're state legislators. So imagine, if you will, like you're saying, where we really put more control. I love what you're doing with Mobilize the Message. You're actually getting the states more people that want to have control in their states, put their states back in control using that 10th Amendment. Also, you made a good point that the U.S. government is always trying to pierce the veil of the 10th Amendment via either dollars or by weakening the power of those legislative bodies that you're actually strengthening with your organization and your results. It's no different than maybe our senators should be appointed by our legislators, but that's a whole other story for another, right?
They're going to call you a racist for that one. You got to be careful, right. But yes.
Exactly. Because, so that was another way the federal government took power away from the state legislative bodies. So I love what you're doing here, Cliff. You're really painting a picture on putting more power back in the legislative bodies with people that are pro-America, pro-freedom, pro-liberty. I love this plan.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I've come to realize is it's very easy to get burned out, right? And so I always say this, we work with a lot of activists, we work with a lot of people that are in the political world trying to make a difference. And look, I always say there's 2 types of people. There are people that are in it for principle, and then there are those that are in it for power, right? And it's important, principle or power. If you're going to get into the world of politics, right? Usually it's one of those 2 things. And I'm not just talking about people running for office, right? I'm talking about activists, volunteers, people that have public policy positions they want to see enacted into law. They're going to fall into one of those categories. And here's the problem. A lot of people that get into it for the right reasons, the people that are principled, that are with us, they want to fight to protect the Constitution, they will get burned out if they continually feel hopeless or they continually feel like they're not making a difference. I'm not telling them that they should not focus on things because it's too big of a task, or I'm not trying to be, like some of the grifters you hear where it's like, well, we got to give them a bone. No. I'm talking about real activists who try to get involved. And like I said, you get in the U.S. Senate race. I mean, in Pennsylvania with Oz and Fetterman, gosh, I want to say they spent like $250 million. And if you're an activist, how do you feel like you're impactful when you're doing that? Whereas if you get involved in a state race, where there's 15,000 to 25,000 people voting, now all of a sudden you can make a difference. So I look at it a couple different ways. Yes, the strategy makes sense because states are that important, but I also always want to be activist and grassroots first. I want to be focused there because honestly, from experience, I've seen so many good people who want to get involved, they want to fight, and they get burned out. So let's focus on things where we can actually have impact and make a difference.
Right.
And it's nice that, hey, it also happens to be the most important, I would argue, the most important governing bodies across this country are the state legislatures.
Absolutely. You're giving more power back to them. So let me get some clarification. Mobilize the Message. Are you guys primarily on campaigns? Where are you primarily on campaigns where you're working on helping the people running for the legislature, or are you on issues like you talked about with Georgia, with what's going on in the Attorney General of Georgia situation, or are you guys a more of a campaign manager position, or are you guys just the grassroots guys that get some funding and you all get more people involved?
All the above. So, I think there's a joke. Thomas Massey, the great congressman from Kentucky, he has a great joke that he tells about DC. And he says, when he first got elected to Congress, House of Cards had come out recently. And people used to ask him, the Kevin Spacey show, they'd say, is DC really like how it is in House of Cards? And Thomas Massey has this great line where he says, well, look, he said, when I first got there, one of my fellow congressmen was caught buying Coke at Union Station. And, all the furniture is very identical. And there's all these things that he's like, man, this is pretty similar to the show, real life. He said, but there's one major difference. The difference between House of Cards and actual Congress is that in House of Cards, there's a guy with a plan, right? And his joke is that nobody in Congress has a plan. So I mean this, it's a microcosm across the country. Most politicians, or at least those in power, they don't have a plan. And this is why, by the way, I'm talking about Republicans, unfortunately. Democrats are serious people. They have a plan. They know how they're going to expand government. They are going to indoctrinate. I mean, they have a plan and they stick to it. They fund the plan. And anybody that gets in their way, they're gone, right? So, exactly, right. They're suicided, as we would say. So, what do we do exactly? We try to vet out and train and find candidates to run at the state level. And we work, by the way, we work with plenty of partners across the country. So there's different state groups that we work with, but we're training people to run for state office. Then we're working with them to build their entire campaign. And then once they're elected, we work with them, the state principal. That's a big, big part, state principal. But then also, how do we make them as effective as possible when it comes to them serving in their capacity? So that's what you're seeing in Georgia. We helped Colton Moore to get elected to the state Senate. He gets in there. He's been a rock solid vote. And now this battle popped up. So, yeah, we got his back 100%. We're helping him to connect with donors, to connect with funding, not because he needs to raise money for his campaign, but because he wants to go out and talk to Republican voters, to mobilize them, to encourage and to pressure their own state senators to support his emergency session to defund her.
It almost sounds like you guys are somewhat of an insurance policy. You can get policies if you get sued for your free speech, or there's actually a company called Patriot Defender. I interviewed them last week that does something where they'll defend you if you say something wrong, or if you violate you're deemed insensitive, or whatever the case may be. It's sad that we're getting to that, but it almost sounds like Mobilize the Message is also an insurance policy, for elected officials that maybe get in office. And like you said, this guy, just needs help getting his message out at a time when he's fighting for his political life, so to speak. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think, we like to look at any tactics we can use to really move the needle politically. And when I say politically, I mean, on policy, right? So, we're always looking for that. I mean, the thing we specialize in is door knocking, right? So we run door knocking campaigns across the country as well to help some of these champions, but that's kind of our specialty, right? So if we're working on an issue or if we're working on a campaign, people laugh. I'm 32 years old. People are always laughing when I say door to door is still the best way. People want to talk about technology and they want to talk about, but look, the establishment has money, meaning they can pay for the technology. And it doesn't mean, by the way, I get in trouble a lot. People are like, well, does that mean you don't send mail and you don't do TV, radio, or digital ads? And no. You have to compete.
Right.
But what you have to do is you have to find where you have a competitive advantage.
Exactly.
And here's what I tell people. Nobody's knocking doors for Jeb Bush. Okay. What I mean is the establishment and kind of the Republicans that really are Democrats, in my opinion, that run as Republicans. They don't have people that have enough energy to go and have doors slammed in their face and do the hard work of
Right.
trying to talk to voters. So that's the secret weapon of the grassroots.
Right.
Our door programs to talk directly to voters and to get them to hear a message. If a 20-year-old girl shows up at your door, William, with a clipboard, you're going to think she's there for Bernie Sanders. And when she tells you, no, I'm here because I believe in this constitutionalist Republican, and he's motivated me and different people in my orbit to get out here to talk to you. I mean, you're like, that is impactful.
Right. Exactly. So this is amazing. And now, do you all fundraise to fund your operations, or does the candidates put some money up, or how's that work? If I
So
can ask that
here's,
question,
oh, absolutely. I mean,
because
we're as,
it sounds like you guys not only have a great plan, but it sounds like you guys are an asset to our communities, to grassroots elected officials. Which, by the way, it's the grassroots guys that I believe actually make better elected officials. They're the guys who know what it's like to be on the battleground. They're the guys that know what it's like to be able to be fighting for their rights. They don't take it for granted. And so these are the guys that need the most help. And it sounds like your organization is really putting forth the effort to help those guys. But the reality is, you guys can't do it for nothing. And if that's the case, I want to try to help any way I can get the word out, for you all.
yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's always ironic, but when you focus on state races, you've got 50 different sets of rules based on the state you're in. And look, I'm as decentralized as they come. I'm not looking for one set of rules, right? Let me be
Right.
clear. But this is why a lot of strategy groups or organizations focus federally, because there's one set of rules. You've got the FEC, and that's it. And so, to answer your question bluntly, in some states we can fundraise directly with the candidate. In some states, we have to operate as a separate entity, like almost like a super PAC within the state. In some states, both of those entities can coordinate. In some states, you're completely firewalled off. So what we look to do is we look to really build infrastructure behind an individual. And by the way, I used to really, really get excited about principles and ideas. And of course, those are what guide me. But I've realized if you don't have a vehicle, if you don't have a person that can lead on that can deliver that message, you're really going to struggle, right? So that's why I always say I like to build infrastructure around a proven, principled leader, because that's what needs to happen. So I'd argue to you, what do we do specifically when it comes to fundraising or strategies? It's different in every state. And so each state we like to go into, and we're focused on that state house. We craft a plan, we work with those that step up, and we execute. I mean, we're doing a candidate training September 30th in Pennsylvania. The following week, we're going to be up in Idaho training state candidates to run for state office. We're going to be in North Dakota the week after that. I mean, we're kind of all over trying to train up folks and then working with them directly when we can legally, right? Or through a PAC, depending on the state,
Right.
because we have to provide resources. But it's funny you bring up fundraising. I want to say this, William, so everybody hears it. I'm a blue collar kid from outside of Philadelphia. Okay, I don't mind wealth. Wealth is a great thing. If people are wealthy, that's not bad.
Right.
But I always like to give some street credit to say, when I first got into this game, I tried to say, oh, well, fundraising is what the establishment does. And no. The reality is we have to work to get our message out.
That's right.
And if your opponent, okay, put yourself in my shoes. I'm running all these campaigns, and our opponents, pretty much every race you do at the state level, both people start off with no name ID, meaning most voters have no idea who either person is.
Exactly.
Now, if the establishment can afford to send a mailer to every Republican voter in the district for 60 days straight leading up to the election, and we have no money, so we can't compete in that name identification game, it's so hard to win. And so I'm not telling people that I like the system and that I like the need to raise money, but I really try to be bold and blunt about the fact that we should not be scared of building a strategy, funding that strategy, and then executing it if it means we will advance the principles of liberty.
So you are speaking to somebody, me, of course, that is going to be a perfect example of what you just now said. Do you know? And I know it's been a while since you were on my show last. You know, I ran for the legislature 4 years ago.
It was 20, or was it 18? Was it 20?
2019. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. Louisiana,
I
right?
know. I know. We knew and talked, but I didn't know if you remember that or not. It was kind of a blip, on the screen. But I spent $20,000, okay, on my campaign. $22,000 on the campaign. My opponent spent $66,000. Okay, he knocked, on doors. I joke about that, but like he didn't. He knocked on a couple, but I'm not because he and I are friends now. We were friends then, but I'm not, say anything bad against him. I just know that I knocked on every single door in the district. Now I know I knocked on a lot more doors than he did because I knocked on every single door in the district, and I kind of know what his activities were. But he outspent me, 3-1,
3-1. Right.
okay. So now the end result was 58% to 42%. Okay. So you look at how much I got in my first campaign. I got 42% by knocking on every single door in the district. And I literally knocked on every single door in the district. Got 42%. Now, take that effort and this is where I'm saying you're speaking to me here. Take that effort of me, and it was 90% of the door knocker was me by myself, by the way. I just did 8 months knocking on doors, and occasionally if I had a few little help here and there, but 90% of it was me knocking on doors. 42% of the vote. He outspent me. So imagine if I would have done a little bit more fundraising. Had I had a team like you guys in there saying, okay, we're going to get you some more door knockers and we're going to help you raise some money. I believe, 9%, 8% plus one vote would have been very attainable with an organization like yours. So you made an excellent point. I'm sorry it took me a long way to say it that way, but
Well, I tell you what, you overperformed. I mean that as a compliment. For being outspent 3-1 to be in the 40s is pretty significant. But it's exactly my point, right? And I hope anybody listening, anybody watching knows, or at least can take this knowledge, learn from what we've experienced, right? And it's funny, William. A lot of times people come to our trainings, and I spend half my time. They say I talk them out of running for office.
Yeah.
Like in Pennsylvania, the average Republican will raise $157,000 to win their seat for state house.
Wow.
So that's what I always ask. I'd ask if you're in Pennsylvania, I'd say, look, that's what I'm going to say this at the end of this month at the training. How are you going to raise $157,000?
Right.
And people tell me all the time, well, I'm going to have grassroots support. I'm like, listen, I know plenty of folks that have had grassroots support. It can go so far. You can move the needle 5, 10, even 15 points. But if your opponent is starting off where they're going to dump money and send mail and do radio, it's just so hard to counteract it. And by the way, if anybody figures out a plan that doesn't cost money that's effective, share it with me. Right. I'd love to see it and utilize it.
Love it. Well, Cliff, we're up against our mark. But how can people find out? How can people get more involved with Mobilize the Message?
Yeah, so I mean, directly, anybody can get a hold of me through Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Cliff Maloney. If you'd like to email me, I'm fine to give that out publicly. It's just cliff@mobilizethemessage.com. That's cliff@mobilizethemessage.com. And look, we'd love to chat with anybody. If you got a project you're working on, if you think you've got something that, specifically, I'll be interested if it's based on state policy. But there's one rule. It's got to be ideologically aligned. We don't do work for hire. It's got to be something we believe is a fight for liberty, a fight for freedom, and would love to help any of your viewership to try to execute on some of these programs. But William, I appreciate you, and I appreciate the program. Always good to see you.
Awesome. I'm gonna have you on my Freedom Forum here coming up again. And I'm gonna have, that's a 15-minute interview on where we're losing freedom in America. That's another topic for another day. And I know you have another organization. We're going to get you on soon. So hang on 1 second while I close out. And then I'm going to talk to you 1 second afterwards. I have an idea for you. Everybody else, if you think that Mobilize the Message is something that can help you in your state, please get a hold of Cliff Maloney. Thank you so much for listening today. And also, this recording will be on YouTube, Rumble, and on all podcast apps. Please share it. Thank you so much and have a great day.